Hello, my name is Erica Cisneros, and this is my oral presentation for Drama 70, Section 61 at Los Medanos College. Today, I will be comparing and contrasting the films Dersu, Uzala, and Into the Wild, both of which we saw during the course of this semester. In this presentation, I will touch on the general themes of these two films, as well as comparing and contrasting their cinematography, acting, and the effects it has on its viewer. Let's begin with Akira Kurosawa's film, Dersu Uzala, which had many themes embedded within it. The power of nature, the ignorance of men, cultural clashes, and the relationship between men and nature are among them. Critics tend to focus on whether or not Kurosawa was trying to point out a way in which human beings fail to see the power of nature, or if it only portrays the ways in which they become aware of the power of it. I believe that in fact it is both of those points. If one truly analyzes the film, it is clear that both coexist within it, and it is that coexistence that makes the movie unique and special. This movie also portrays a way in which man reacts differently when presented with the might of nature, living in peace with it versus considering himself invincible before it. The first indication of the relationship between man and Mother Nature is observed in the first scene, when the captain goes to a town looking for the forest where his good friend was buried. He asks a villager where the trees and the rest of the forest has gone, and he tells him that he supposes all were turned down to make room for the village. From the very beginning of the film, Kurosawa makes his intentions known with this scene, a battle between man and nature. Through this simple yet complex interaction, we learn that the villagers chose to cut down the forest in order to make space for their homes. This in itself means two things. First, the needs of men were put before the respect for Mother Nature. Thus, the natural landscape and fauna were affected by it. Second, man is presented with a conundrum: to leave nature be or to look after his own survival. As it is obvious by the villagers' response to the captain, men chose the latter, as many more have before them. On the other hand, we have Into the Wild, a breathtaking allegory of the desire man has to find himself and become one with nature. From the beginning of the film, we are introduced to a quote by Lord Byron that reads, "There is pleasure in the pathless woods, there is rapture on the lonely shore. There is society where none intrudes, by the deep sea and music in its roar. I love not men the less, but nature more." This beautiful quote sets the mood for the film, letting the viewer know of the importance and peacefulness of nature for the purpose of this story. This movie brings to life the adventures of Chris McCandless, a young man in his early 20s who gives up his money shortly after graduating from college to pursue his dream of living out in nature. This film delivers a very familiar feeling of the desperation humans have to feel a part of the universe and nature. From the interactions Chris had with the Dutch couple to his constant learning of survival in nature. One of the most striking scenes in the film is when Chris hunts a moose and has to go through the process of cleaning it and cooking it. We see a very excited Chris after he managed to kill the moose, run back to the magic bus to get his notebook with the information he had learned about preparing the animal he hunted. Yet this already tells us much about his idealistic nature, as he has no real-world experience in how to do it, only what he has on his notebook. The scene turns bleak when we begin to see him struggle with cleaning and cutting a very large moose all by himself. As the scene turns, we see a very frustrated Chris trying to keep himself together as flies begin to come near the body of the moose. The blood and taxing dismemberment of the animal brings out the demons of Chris' past, and we get a glimpse of how the domestic violence in his home truly affected him. He starts talking to himself and reenacting a terrible memory of his father attacking his mother over Christmas presents, which I will not lie, was a little disturbing, but certainly necessary to the integrity of the film. This portrayal of Chris coincides with that of Dersu in his demons after he hurts but not kills the tiger in the mountains. He struggles with his feelings on it and how Mother Nature takes revenge on him by cursing him. He becomes angry and begins talking to the trees and animals and yelling at the captain's men. While we have two films that are very similar in some ways, such as the need man has to be one with nature, coexists with it, the scenery of the wild outdoors, and two men who are clearly very independent, we also have a varying ways in which these two films differ. For starters, we have the different time periods, which results in the acting choices made by both actors playing Chris and Dersu made as they were relevant to their time. Emil Hirsch, who played Chris in Into the Wild, did a magnificent job at playing a young graduate who lived in the 70s. He created a very carefree, loving young man who was in the prime of his life and simply wanted to reach his objective, to make it to Alaska. On the other hand, we have Maxim Munsuk, who brought Dersu Uzala to life with an amazing redemption of a man who was at peace with nature, but who was also in pain by the memories he carried, like the loss of his wife and children. Munsuk does a fantastic job portraying a very knowledgeable mountain man from the early 1900s with limited resources by civilization standards, but who always proved to be more resourceful than those more civilized. Yet both stories and characters' interpretations lead to the same thing, a struggle to assimilate to civilization and to nature. There's a struggle to assimilate to living in the town once he goes to live with the captain, and the captain struggles to survive in the Siberian mountains. Similarly, Chris struggles with being a part of civilization, but in the end, once he makes it to Alaska, he struggles to adapt to nature, as seen in the scene where he loses the meat he was preparing when he killed a moose because of his lack of experience. Both films are about man versus nature and the ability to coexist at the same time. Thanks to their acting and cinematography, they bring to life men's almost desired death center, to be free in nature.